Learn marketing. Learn how you're going to get your company, your brand, your product, your service, whatever it is in front of somebody. A lot of it has got digital now and it's applicable to most companies. And if you don't know it or you're not working with really smart people who know it, you're going to struggle. Yeah, you'll get lucky maybe and have some content go viral. But even if you're not putting out content, like it's just not going to work.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Preston Hamby. And Preston started off his journey going off to college, not sure what he wanted to do, got a degree in hotel management, came out, decided maybe he didn't want to do hotel management because they have to be open all the time. You have to be doing a lot of crazy hours. And so went into financial planning, went through the crash of 2008, 2009, decided to make a switch, went into oil and gas. Family was in that industry for 3 generations, moved to Singapore, worked there for a bit. Then decided to start looking for a different work and different opportunity, and also had a couple kids along the way. So started doing a few other things, including going into the solar industry in Austin, Texas, and also founded another startup that was a better fit as well. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Preston.
Hey, thanks for having me, Devin. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, excited to have you on. And so I just gave a condensed version to a much longer journey, but let's rewind and unpack that a bit. So tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in college, going into hotel management and not quite knowing what or what you wanted to do.
Sure. So I started as engineering, and I remember sitting in Calculus 3 thinking I was crazy if I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. No insult to engineers. It's all great. And that's kind of how my brain thinks, but it just wasn't for me.
Hmm.
And so transferred to another university, University of Houston, found hotel and restaurant management, which seemed like a great degree, fun industry. Secondary or kind of a fallback was just a business and finance and management degree. So thought that I could use that well and got into it, graduated, worked in the industry for a long time. As you said, they never close. And so just didn't want to do that. It was fun while it lasted, but working late into the night all weekends, it was rough. So chose another path. Excuse me. And
Now,
so
and maybe just one question on that, and just to expound on it. So you went in, you obviously got a degree in hotel management, but then you come out and decide, hey, this isn't the path for me. Kind of at what point along the journey, or kind of when did you figure that out? Was it, hey, I graduate, got the degree, started working in there, and now I figured out I hate this and I never want to do it? Or is it more of, hey, I find this interesting, a lot of good lessons to learn, and even if I don't go into that exact industry, I still think it's applicable? Kind of walk us through how you came to that determination.
I mean, I was an idiot, and so I was a kid, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And at the sort of the same time, I met my girlfriend, which is now my wife, and she was really good at poking and prodding and getting inspiring me, for lack of a better term, to do something else, do something better that was a little bit more supportive of having a family and kids and all the other stuff. Like it's a long story, but yeah, it was that. And so found financial planning, did that for a few years. Like I said, it's 6 days a week. You talk about a grind. That was really hard. A couple hundred phone calls a day, very little on the financial planning side, more on just cold calling and signing up new customers. We did have all the licenses, but it takes a long time to really learn that industry. And so we learned sort of the higher level stuff in insurance and financial planning, investments, and general market strategies. But at the end of the day, your success was based on how many people you sign up. And
Hmm.
so made that up until about the 2008 crash, which was just brutal. At the time, I was living in Houston, and as Lehman and everybody else were going under, we had also in Houston had Hurricane Ike came through. So we had no power, no internet, and internet back then was kind of crappy anyway. So um, we couldn't call our customers to tell them what was happening or our clients. and sort of alleviate some concerns or make some moves. You just couldn't do anything. And so having to deal with a hurricane and that, it's definitely a one-off thing, but it was just, I just kind of shed light that that's crazy. I didn't enjoy what I was doing at that point already, and that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back.
Hmm. So no, I get that, and 6 days a week and consistently and being or doing calls all the time. But that it sounds like it would be a bit of a grind. And while it may pay well, there's certainly other things that are also important. So now, as you kind of say, okay, did this for a period of time, got to endure the or some of the crash. I think as we talked a little bit before, you decided to make a bit of a different or go into a different industry or go to a different path, which was kind of start or into oil and gas. Is that right?
Correct. So that was a thing of comfort. I'd been on oil rigs since I was a kid. I mean, I think I was on my first offshore oil rig when I was like 3 or 4. It was my grandfather, my dad, uncles, a lot of folks in my family. I mean, that's kind of prevalent in Houston, growing up in Houston. And so decided to leave financial industry and then jumped back into the restaurant industry only because I knew I could make connections. So I ran a wine bar and I was just absolutely, I just didn't care. And I would ask everybody that came in, and honestly, 60, 70% of the people came in from the industry anyway. Got really lucky and met the CEO of a really large manufacturer early one afternoon, chatted up about wine, what he was doing, and sort of what I was looking for. Told me to sign up for this program. It was like an internship program, which I interviewed for I think it was 30. And I just remember thinking like, this is crazy. At 30, I was competing against some 21, 22, 23-year-olds. It's like, in, I guess in hindsight, it's not really that big of an age difference, but in the moment, it feels like decades. Um, so competed for this internship, didn't get it, but got a call like the next day from one of the heads of the divisions asking me to come in and work for him. And so I did, and that was great. I loved it. Worked in rig up yards, learned that industry for a while. It was on the operations side of a big sales division of the biggest manufacturing division. And so it was fantastic. Got to travel the world with my boss, setting up efficiencies. So kind of got exposed to the operational thing, P&L management. And I don't think anybody really grows up thinking I want to be an operator, because who the hell knows what an operator is other than someone that might perform surgeries. Um, and so got exposed to it there, really developed a love for it. And from there, that company itself grew by acquisition. So when I was there, my first year I was there, I think we'd had the 210th acquisition in the course of like 7 years.
Hmm.
And I was traveling abroad and met somebody who just started with another division in Singapore and was chatting with them because that's what we did. The company's really good at acquiring, but not bringing them on and meshing them into the company to the full conglomerate of the company. So it's all these companies that almost operated autonomously. I think there were like 110 different ERPs, so 107, 110, something like that, operating, and they had to be all manually tied in at the end of the month and quarter. It was just a big nightmare.
Hmm.
And so I met this guy. One of our deals was that we helped all the different divisions talk to each other and utilize each other and know how to cross sell. Because once you get outside of Houston and really the US, it's not as big. So a lot of people are doing a lot of things. I met him in Singapore just in passing. Hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. Sure enough, kind of a fate type thing. We wanted to move to Singapore. My wife and I were there on stayed there and just kind of explored Southeast Asia for a couple weeks. Came back, got a call from a friend of mine in Singapore who had just moved. A bunch of us in this office moved to Singapore at the same time. He's like, "Hey, that person you met, he's looking to hire a country manager of this other division." So they'd been interviewing for a while. Evidently, a lot of people don't want to move abroad, which I just find crazy. So long story short, I tricked somebody into hiring me for a position that I was woefully underqualified for. Um, in a really small division running basically Southeast Asia, a little bit of Asia as well. From operation, really everything. I ran everything, operations, sales, everything under operations, some of the financial stuff. I mean, it was crazy what keys I was handed at that moment. Now that I think back, I would never do that now, but I'm really glad it happened.
Hmm.
And so I just discovered autonomy. My boss sat with me at the time, but he was busy with some of the other areas. He eventually got let go, and then I was reporting to the guy who ran all of international, and he sat in Dubai. So that just afforded me autonomy. So it afforded me autonomy to screw things up. And I guess we were such a small cog in his bigger P&L that it didn't matter, or he trusted us, or whatever. But man, I just screwed things up, and then I had to fix it, and I was allowed the autonomy to fix it. And then I was able to jump on opportunities they presented themselves, and really just learn by blunt force trauma to the head, which is evidently how I learned the best. And so, yeah, from there, I just grew and grew and grew and really loved it. Had two kids over there. But after a few years, the thought of flying back with an 18-month-old and I think a 3-year-old at the time, I would have rather pulled my toenails off one by one. That 24-hour flight in a metal tube with tiny children is not super fun, especially if you're doing it every 6 to 8 months.
Hmm.
And plus, our family's getting old, so we looked for something else here. And we just kind of set cities that we narrowed the search down to. A solar company came up, which is the antithesis of what I had been in. I kind of felt that oil
It
and
is
gas at the
going
time.
kind of from one extreme of the industry to the other, where nothing bad or wrong with either of them, but just kind of seemed like they're a little bit of polar opposites. But you got into there, but so how did you kind of go from gas and oil to solar? Kind of just opportunity presented itself, or kind of how'd you make that switch?
Yeah, I mean, I think oil and gas at the time was just the best. I grew up in it. It was just a different industry altogether. A lot of it had bad connotation, but the one I experienced was really fun. You got to learn a lot. So many of those folks built companies on the back of a napkin from designs, just brilliant people that never came out of high school that just built billion-dollar companies. And so the relationship and the trust you could get there was great. But over time, it changed. And, for lack of a better term, that's a sunsetting industry. I mean, it's not in my generation or maybe my kids' generation. We know where all the oil is. That's not a surprise. There's nothing really new there. It's just the technology to get it out in an affordable price. And so with that, seeing it change, I just decided to switch industries and was kind of looking in a certain range, some renewable stuff. We had a renewable product in Singapore that I really liked, and it was driven by one of our Norwegian companies who was way further down the renewable road than really anybody else was. Got in, started figuring that out. And like I said, just the job came up here in Austin for SunPower, big solar power manufacturer, solar panel manufacturer, cells and panels. And it was sold to me as a startup that had been around for almost a decade, or a little over a decade at the time. When again, I like the autonomy, so I like to be able to pounce on things and learn new things if I wanted to. I don't like blinders. I just feel like you miss a lot of efficiencies there. So came back, ran manufacturing in the Philippines to some degree, fulfillment, distribution, operational efficiencies out of the Philippines, Mexico into the US. It was great, really interesting, but man, a lot of travel, a lot of siloed activities, for lack of a better term, a lot of pissing matches. And it would take 6 months. I found, as an example, within I think 6 months of being there, I think it was $24 million of excess dead inventory just hanging out in a couple different warehouses. And it took me another, I think 3 or 5 months and the company to hit a cash crunch to finally be heard to hey, this is just dead money tied up. This doing nothing for us. In fact, it's devaluing. We're spending more than we're making on it. So it's just a big initiative to move inventory out to generate some cash. So that was the type of stuff we were dealing with, traveling quite a bit, and dealing with different countries who are creating work just for work's sake. And I think I was on a call at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night one night and just cruising LinkedIn, just sort of frustrated, and found a really weird job title, or not a title, but a company for director of ops, and applied for it and got a call back, I think literally the next day for an interview. And they started telling me what it was. It's one of those things that's just it was easy apply before easy apply. And it just, you could see the title and where it was and just apply without really digging. And get the call. It's for a startup. It's a massage tool company that really blew up because of it appeared on Keeping Up with Their Kardashians. And I kind of questioned my thought process at the time and talked to him a little bit more, really liked the guy who was interviewing me. And that was it. I was sold. And that was my foray. That was my gateway position into startups, into the startup world. And I just haven't looked back since then. And so
No, sounds like it was a great opportunity, and again, kind of one that came along that was worthwhile not to pass up. So you made that switch. Now, I think that in addition to kind of going in working for the startup and going down that route and getting more experience and kind of going that direction, you've also done a few things that maybe a bit more recently as well, with some of your own, whether you want to call it second job, side hustle, startup, whatever that might be, or whatever you might call that. But give us a bit of an idea as to kind of how that's evolved alongside of everything.
Yeah, so I run, this is my fourth or fifth or sixth startup that I've been on the leadership team of, and it's my founder and I and one other person at the current startup, Awkward Essentials. Um, and the Frances Tang, my founder at this one, she's something else. She really understands where her strengths are and where they aren't. And she's also one of those people that understands that you learn a lot by seeing a lot of other things instead of staying where we are and what we've done, as opposed to talking to other people and figuring out other things that they've done in the past. So just in my own network and her network and collectively our network as a company, I've reached out, or I've had some folks reach out to me to help, and then just some folks that I've offered help to, and been a part of the SKU program here in Austin and advise some companies. And you just get a different look. So something that works for us in this startup might not work for someone else, or might. And the inverse is true as well. And so we talk a lot to other folks. We do advise when needed, because ultimately, especially if it's in sexual wellness, this is such a weird industry with a lot of taboo sort of labeling, that if we can help the cumulative industry grow, it helps us in turn as well. And we don't really look at it from a competitive standpoint. I'm sure there's competitors out there that you don't want to associate with, but ultimately, as long as we mostly align and it's something that we can help each other on, we're in to talk.
Mm.
Um, I mean, what you do day in and day out, IP and patent, that's a big deal for a lot of startups, but specifically in sexual wellness. In fact, we're dealing with one right now. So anything that we can cut to the chase, save someone a few months on of deliberating, or even a few $1,000s talking to a quote unquote expert, we'll do it to help. It just helps everyone in the long run.
No, makes sense. And you're right. I mean, and for a good portion of the country or world or whatever the subset is, it's a something that's an awkward or conversation or an awkward product for other people, and yet it also is one where it presents an opportunity, and it also addresses a need that oftentimes, or sometimes people can feel awkward about it, or has to go through that. And so I like even the name of the company was just Awkward Essentials. You might as well own it and address it. So kind of give it, or catch us up a bit. Where are you at today as far as still working for, you mentioned several startups, different businesses you've been involved with maybe in the past and presently and in the future, and kind of where things at today with the, Awkward Essentials and any of the other startups you're involved with?
So Awkward Essentials is where a majority of my time sits. So we are, I mean, I don't know what I can and can't say on your podcast, but I'm just going to say it anyway, and we can deal with the editing later. But I mean,
I'll just caveat, I keep it so that my kids can listen to it. So as long as it isn't too racy, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. You might have to bleep a couple things.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we started as Come and Go, or Francis started the company as Come and Gone, and then through advisory of our investor, changed the name to be a little bit of a broader spectrum to allow for more products and expanded product category. And so changed in 2021 to Awkward Essentials. And the hero product has always been the cum sponge, so the drip stick, just to help for after sex cleanup. And that has been, I mean, it's the most fun to talk about anywhere, a party, really, just anywhere, a podcast randomly that your kids might listen to. I apologize, because I have kids and they pick up the boxes and ask, what is this? And I immediately send them to their mother to talk.
Fair enough.
So yeah, so it's fun trying to some degree get some normalization of a couple of conversations, not in like changing the world type stuff, just letting people know that there's maybe situations that women deal with that they don't want to or don't have to. And so providing products to help that. Started primarily D2C, 2 years just grinding through Shopify. Launched Amazon last year, so a little over a year ago, after tons and tons of debate. But really, kind of in your field of expertise, we started as a protection standpoint. So making sure that we were the first to market, we were the first to list, we were the first ones to start bidding on keywords and start to bring up some of those terms so that they were our branded terms, not anybody else. And so that we would rank on that stuff. And honestly, I thought it was going to be, 10 orders a week, something around there. And it has just gone crazy. And so that's growing substantially. I think we've 3 or 4x since we started in April of last year. And it's just going crazy. And so it's a weird channel. It's definitely weird. It operates in a vacuum more than anything else. Like things don't come out of it. It's more like a black hole, but things do go into it and do stimulate it. So any marketing that we do from a D2C perspective influences that, because people just trust Amazon. I mean, it's the biggest marketplace in the world. You can't ignore it. And then from there, after a lot of hard work, we, as of March of this year, started launching in retail. We had some adult stores that we were doing some business with and distributing products into, but after a really long conversation and testing on .com, we launched on CVS shelves in March. And so I was right at 2,000 doors. And since then, I guess it's official, but we're in all of Spencer's doors as of last month. I had no idea how big they were until we were chatting with them. I honestly, just because I thought that malls were shut down for the most part and becoming Amazon fulfillment centers, something like 600 doors, which is really impressive. And so the retail piece is becoming a really interesting channel for us as well. Marketing in general, as an operator, we don't speak that language. As a fulfillment person and finance person, we don't speak marketing. And so that's been the thing that I've been learning the most in the past 18 or so months. I used to joke that it was like voodoo or black magic, that no one really knew how it worked, but there was some weird agreement in the back end that helps people be successful. I don't necessarily think that that's wrong anymore, but I've, pulled the curtain back a little bit and understand how the wizard is doing it. I'm not a marketer per se, but I know enough to make me dangerous. And like I said, one of the few that can speak about it, few operators that can speak about it. So, that's the fun of a startup, is that if there's something that needs to get done, you just jump on it. You don't have to go ask someone's permission or, hey, can you do this for me or whatever. And we're really lean and super conservative. We're not just going to be one of those startups that gets a headline because we went from 3 people to 60 people or 600 people just so we can get a headline. We want to grow and be profitable, and not be a flash in the pan.
No, I think that definitely makes sense. Sometimes it's exciting, and I'll put exciting in quotes for those that can't are watching the video, that that we're doing great and we're making all this money and revenue and income and growing and everything else. And yet, first of all, sometimes that's not what you end up wanting to be. Like, you may find that it's a company that's grown in a direction that you don't enjoy anymore. And two, that with that growth and that size and those adjustments, you bring out a lot more responsibilities. It changes the nature of the business. And so I think that mindfully saying this is the direction we want to go and this is how we're going to do it and this is what makes sense for the business definitely there is a good direction to be in. It sounds like a great direction for you guys to head.
Yeah, I mean, something that we've noticed in the whole Raise game that has kind of fallen apart is something I've been calling it recently, and I'm not downing it by any stretch of the imagination, but like it was almost a Ponzi scheme. So companies were raising just to cover their losses, and we're just not going to do that. We were on a call with a marketer 2 days ago, where the guy was telling us he was handing a portfolio to fix. They made 16 million last year, but lost 13. Just it's such a huge delta. I mean, it's so crazy to me, and we just don't play that way. So, like I said, we're in it for longevity.
I think that makes perfect sense. So, well, now as we've reached the present day of the journey, and even looking a little bit into the future, so where you guys are headed, it's a great time to transition to the 2 questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So I'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
it wasn't a single thing. Like I said earlier, I learned from blunt force trauma to the head. The holistic thing, it was during kind of a window of time of a few months, is not paying attention to the detail and trusting people more than I should. And I mean, a long story short, that led us to have to shut down our entire operation in Singapore for like 2 weeks to rectify the problem. And it was a nightmare. And it was professionally one of the worst things I've ever dealt with. People talk about COVID. COVID sucked. The startup I was running at the time down 96% in the first 2 weeks of COVID. And that's outside of my control. I can't sweat that stuff. We pivoted and moved very quickly and solved as best we could. But the other thing was completely in my control, and I just screwed it up. So as a leader, if you're not a detail oriented person, learn how to be, and at least figure out processes and reports that you can catch the summaries really quickly. And something that came out of that, like basically my number one motto is, I'm never going to ask someone to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And so I've been the type of, I guess it's called leadership, but I'll try to learn everybody's job so I can speak intelligently on it if I'm going to be leading it. And at least, like, I guess an example, if they're out for a day or a week, I can run it. Not as well, because I don't think I'm smarter than anybody else by any stretch of the imagination. It's just having that ability to figure it out and have some sort of idea of what's going on.
Mm. No, I think that makes sense. And it's a balance line. I think as you get further into a business, you get more experience, you kind of figure things out. To your point, it's almost one where I don't know that there's a good way to learn a lot of those. Who do you trust? How much rope do you give them to have ability to make decisions versus hang themselves, and kind of what does that all look like? And it just comes through blunt force of going through those experiences, learning the lessons, and doing it better the next go around, and having that opportunity to grow. So sounds like a easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from. Second question now that I always ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Learn marketing. Learn how you're going to get your company, your brand, your product, your service, whatever it is, in front of somebody. A lot of it has got digital now, and it's applicable to most companies. And if you don't know it, or you're not working with really smart people who know it, you're going to struggle. Yeah, you'll get lucky maybe and have some content go viral. But even if you're not putting out content, like it's just not going to work. From an operator, from a financial standpoint, I'm not trying to downplay it, but that stuff is easy. I mean, it's more or less black and white. There's certain, I mean, you've got gap when it comes to your P&L and your finance. So there's certain rules you can follow. From fulfillment and manufacturing, at the end of the day, it's getting a product from a design phase to a completed product, so a finished good, and then taking that product as a brown box in to your warehouse and a brown box out to your customer. So it's really nothing more complex than that. The marketing piece is so nuanced and so different, and can absolutely make or break you. And so if it's not your thing, I would at least, again, have enough information to speak intelligently on it so that you know what metrics to be looking for. And frankly, marketing is another language. So definitely learn all the acronyms, learn what those metrics indicate, how they can more or less be influenced. Be thinking about ROI instead of some of the fancy terms. They're not fancy, they've been around forever, but like, be thinking about, is this dollar that I'm spending on this marketing initiative making me a dollar plus back? Instead of, oh, well, my ROAS is 1+ or whatever. Is it ultimately making me money, or is it driving customers to my site that, and through my email flows, that I can be making money within X period of time?
Hmm. No, and I
So
think I like that. I think that learning marketing, whether or not you're going, and some people don't like marketing. I actually find it interesting, and
I do
that's
too
part of
now.
one of the things that I enjoy, and I wish I had more time to do it than less. But it's always a balance of getting everything done. But I think whether or not you enjoy it or not, it's a good thing that you should at least be able to understand and be able to either do it yourself, give direction, whether it's a employee that works under you, whether it's a third party, whether it's an agency, but having that understanding is a great perspective. And I come from an industry of attorneys, and some aspects, attorneys are, good, or I'll put quote again, good marketers in the sense they're ambulance chasers and they always
Yeah.
figure out a way to find the people doing it. And yet on the other hand, most of the industry, attorneys just want to practice the law and they never ever figure out marketing, and that always hampers people's career. And I think that's applicable across a lot of other industries, that even if you're in other aspects, having that skill set and not be able to understand it and speak intelligently about it is going to be very impactful about your business. So I think that's a great takeaway.
I mean, even like you said, setting up a referral network is a marketing initiative. And so you can't just put something out there and expect it to sell itself. I don't care what it is. You got to have some push behind it.
Yep, absolutely. So, well, now as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, all of our handles, all of our socials. We've got a pretty big presence on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Go to our website. Our website's fun. A Twinkies. We use a Twinkie as our mascot. Hopefully, no one gets really angry about that. And then something that looks like a Barbie but isn't a Barbie, to give some sort of example in some of the products that we use. So all of our handles are Awkward Essentials. Website's Awkward Essentials. So really anything that way. Personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. I spend enough time looking at our socials professionally that I don't have any social media accounts. It's too distracting. It's too much for me. So yeah, that's the best way.
Awesome. We definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, find out a bit more, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. And I feel like we almost have to put disclaimer: there is no association between this company and Barbie, just to make sure that you don't get in any legal. Not that you would get in any legal trouble, but
Yeah,
I think it's always
it.
kind of funny when you pick up those little things. You're like, I get why they're saying that. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you other listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to share these journeys with even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Preston, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Evan. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.